All right. Our thanks to Jessica there. Joining me now to talk more about this New York City mayoral race and other political issues is David Carlucci, a Democratic strategist and former New York State Senator, as well as John Thomas, a Republican strategist and managing director at Nestpoint, a firm specializing in finance, private equity, and government relations. Thank you so much to the both of you for our political panel tonight.
Great to be with you.
All right, so I first want to flag a post Vice President JD Vance shared showing New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani posing with a well-known local imam, a man the vice president claims is a, quote, unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. David, we'll start with you. Should Americans, and especially these New York voters out there, be worried at all about some of the endorsements that Mamdani is proudly displaying, like this person?
Well, I think there's a lot of issues in this campaign, but I think those should be about the policies that these gentlemen are putting forth and not this type of hearsay. This is kind of ridiculous. They say in this tweet about an unindicted co-conspirator. So this is someone that was never actually charged with a crime. And also, from what we've seen from the mayoral candidates' comments, this is someone that has also met with Mayor Bloomberg, Mayor de Blasio, even Eric Adams. But because it's Mamdani and he is of Muslim faith, that this is being raised. The fact that that's what the vice president is focusing on, I think, is really a sad state of affairs. If anything, he should be talking about the policies and those disagreements, but not the personal characteristics of someone, as well as making such outlandish allegations that this person would surround themselves with someone like a terrorist. I mean, that's just absurd.
Yeah, David, I'm glad you pointed that out because the New York Times, they previously reported that the list of potential co-conspirators, including that man in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, was, quote, overly broad, and he was never charged, as you pointed out. So, you know, John, here, given the talk that from both sides of the aisle about the need to turn down the total temperature when it comes to political dialogue and possible violence, is it irresponsible of the vice president to actually connect this individual to the bombing if he never was actually charged and there's no evidence that he was actually involved in it?
Look, I think the picture speaks for itself, but it's also not just the unindicted co-conspirator. This same character it's well documented that he's made openly homophobic remarks. This person's children has been incarcerated for terrorist-related activities. I mean, this is not a clean character, I would say. And the biggest concern is that a lot of New Yorkers and Americans, quite frankly, do have concerns about who is this real Mamdani. He positions himself as not somebody middle of the road. Of course, we don't have problems with pictures of Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo and these others. They are mainstream, boring characters. But when there's somebody new on the stage that we don't quite understand who they are, what they represent, and the policies they do talk about are quite extreme, yes, I think it's fair to be concerned with people that they put pictures with. I mean, I think that's a fair shot. Honestly, I do.
Yeah, so you're speaking more about the company you keep in general, regardless of any sort of accusations about the World Trade Center bombing. All right, our next topic, let's talk a little bit about former U.S. Representative George Santos. He's been freed from prison, as we now know, where he'd been serving time for identity theft and then wire fraud related to conning his donors and his constituents. He'd been sentenced to 7 years in jail, but he ended up only serving 84 days before being granted clemency by President Trump earlier this week. David, what do you think? Did he receive enough punishment for his crimes?
Well, I think the problem here is that it's very clear that the reason why this man is out of prison is because he is loyal to the president. And that's the most problematic thing here. We can't speak to the crimes that were done or what the judge ultimately decided. But what we can see is that it's blatantly obvious that the president is setting up a system where people have to bend over backwards to be loyal to him. And unless you are, you're not going to be considered for a commutation. That's the real problem here. And I think when you talk about New York, I think particularly in Long Island, but across the state, a lot of people are just disgusted by this action. And that's the real problem here. It's putting the weight on the scales of justice. And I think that is the most problematic thing here. The perception just reeks of favoritism. And that is just setting a long-term standard that I think people lose faith in the government and in the judicial system when you see something like this.
Yeah, David, it's like you're teeing up my questions for John here, because we're looking at now George Santos, but then even before that, former New York Congressman Michael Grimm, President Trump really appearing to show clemency or provide clemency to high-profile Republicans. In fact, I think President Trump said Santos deserves it because he had the courage to vote Republican. So is it justifiable, John, for a president's pardon to fall on partisan lines, or should there be more of an obligation when it comes to these types of things to actually activate this side for both sides, whether you're a Republican or Democrat?
I think the president showed pretty good compassion here by basically saying, look, Santos screwed up, but did he deserve 7 years behind bars? That seems a little harsh. The voters of the district that he represents have an opportunity to toss him at the next round. And let's be clear, it was Joe Biden that actually began this pardoning family members and putting his finger on the scales of justice. And now President Trump's coming in and trying to show compassion where he thinks things are a little heavy-handed, and he gets that firsthand because he was a victim of lawfare himself. Yes, he managed to escape by getting reelected president, but he too could have fallen victim of an overly heavy hand of justice.
Right. And hate it or love it, it is a part of the president's powers, after all. All right, David Carlucci and John Thomas, thank you so much for your time here tonight.
Good to be with you. Thanks.